Stormy Daniels, the porn star who says she had an affair with President Trump, is out on bail right now for getting a little bit too close to people at a strip club in Ohio. So Daniels was at this club late last night for an event, and according to police, she took her top off and then she forced the faces of some of the customers into her chest. This included police officers who we have just learned from the police department were undercover. Now, in Ohio, regardless of who it is, that's illegal. Strippers are not allowed to touch anyone while nude. Well, Daniel's lawyer, Michael Avenatti, says this was all a setup.
So she was there for her performance, and unbeknownst to her, the police had set up a sting operation within the strip club with multiple officers. And during her performance, they asked her if they could place their face in between her breasts while she was performing on stage.
And she said yes.
I'm not going to get into the details of what happened next. The undercover officers were female, which was not unusual to her because there's a lot of females that are going to clubs around the country to see her.
All right, so Columbus police, as we mentioned, are coming out with some more details. They're just releasing a statement saying that they were investigating this club previously. They said, quote, as part of a long-term investigation into allegations of human trafficking, prostitution, along with other vice-related violations. So I want to bring in criminal defense attorney Brad Micklin, who joins me now. Brad, good to have you.
Hi, go on,
so let's talk about what Michael Avenatti said, and the Columbus Police Department did confirm. Listen, there were undercover cops there. So what do you make of this? Just a coincidence that it happened to be at the club Stormy Daniels was performing in?
Well, it's hard to believe that it's a coincidence, and it's hard to believe that they didn't know who she was. And certainly if she was my client, that's probably the first issue that I would raise, is that it had to be motivated by either political gain or even the police officers that are trying to make a name for themselves.
The law's the law, though. I mean, if it's a violation of the law, should she not face charges for this? According to the new statement we just received from Columbus Police Department, they have enforced this law before.
Well, there's always a lot of ambiguity that exists in the law, and especially this statute, which I believe requires that she be, or that the offender be, regularly appearing in this club. And I believe that this may have been a special appearance from her.
So do you think that a lot of these strippers in Ohio are aware of a law like this? They're told, listen, this is something that you're not supposed to do. Have you dug a little bit deeper into the law?
Well, I think there's a common sense issue to this. I mean, obviously, the law is clear with regard to people who are appearing all the time. But there's also the fact that people are going to a strip club and they're not there to read books. So I think you have a little bit of an issue between both sides of this.
Well, you would also assume that some of those patrons who are not there to read books are not going to go to the police department and press charges if something like this were to happen. So it was key that the police officers were there to witness this. What have you learned a little bit more about the nature of their presence and how it went down?
Well, the police are alleging that it was part of an ongoing investigation, that it's about not just the strip club, but prostitution and human trafficking, which is obviously they're all serious issues that need to be investigated. But it's still hard to believe that if they were really investigating it all this time, that they only found 3 people on one day at one time that broke this law.
And when we read the affidavit, it said specifically, during her performance, after removing her top, exposing her chest, she began forcing the faces of these patrons and using her bare chest to smack the patrons. Now, we heard Michael Avenatti saying specifically, I'm not going to get into the details of what happened next after he alleges those officers asked if they could do this to Stormy Daniels. So what do you make of the affidavit versus what Stormy's lawyer is saying?
Well, it's hard to say at this stage because it's a new breaking story, but I think there might be an issue of entrapment and obviously credibility, obviously on both sides, because Stormy Daniels is known to be a stripper and prostitute, but also that the police and other people involved in this investigation had motives for bringing this forward, too.
Real quick, can you just go into that explanation of entrapment when it comes to a setup or a sting operation, as the police department has confirmed this was?
Well, it's hard to define exactly. It's a very intricate legal topic, constitutional issues. But it's basically if you're encouraged in some overt manner to commit a crime, then you're not necessarily guilty of it because you didn't necessarily have the intent to commit it.
Which is kind of what Michael Avenatti is referring to, it seems. Right. Brad Micklin, thank you so much. We appreciate you being with us.